Hello, Rebecca McLaughlin here, author of Nameless Queen, which came out on January 7th, 2020. And here I am, still in January, a couple weeks on, and I'm working hard on my next book. I'm somewhere between a third and a half of the way through doing my second draft. I'm working with a freelance editor who's absolutely lovely, and earlier this week she sent me another letter. I had been sending her small chunks of chapters as I worked on them. So far, I had sent her chapters 1 through chapter 6. And one of the great things about sending someone chapters for editorial review as you write, as you work, is that they have a chance to catch something that you're doing wrong early to help you from making the same mistake for the rest of the book. So it was at this point that she asked me to sort of abandon where I was at and head back to the first couple chapters. The first draft was largely to get the plot on the page, and in the second draft I was really trying to focus on world building and character development. But even as I was writing, now almost half of the way through the book, I could sense that while I was doing a pretty okay job at getting the world building down, I wasn't quite hitting the stride I wanted to with my characters. And being the eagle-eyed editor that she is, Ruth picked up on this as well in the first chapters. So she sent me a letter and had some suggestions about what to change, what to improve, and how to focus in on those character relationships, the character development, and the character growth in those first few chapters. Now, this was the first time that I was sending chapters to someone for editorial review as I was writing them. I did this all the way through the first draft, which was weird and new for me, and here I was doing it in the second draft as well. And one of the results of this is that as you send the chapters off, you really can't edit them anymore. Ruth was going to be working on those chapters while I was writing the following chapters, and then she'd compile them all at the end and send them to me. This would save us the time of her having to read the whole thing after I was done with the whole thing. So in a way, I was really excited to get the chance to go back to the first chapters because I knew some things just weren't clicking for me. On the other hand, I'm looking at derailing the work I was doing in the middle of the book. I knew we would end up having a conversation about it, which we did yesterday, but when I got this letter, it made me realize a little bit about how I approach getting feedback and critique. People always say to let it stew, let it sit, but I didn't realize how crucial that was. So it may be at this point in the video, or much earlier, that you're asking, why are we watching you draw a picture instead of write? Why aren't we watching you type furiously on your edits? Well, that's because when I got the edit letter, I read it, and my immediate reaction was to start drawing instead. I know this is strange, but I've noticed that this is a pattern that I have. If I get a big, dense chunk of something to read, something where it asks me to think critically about my own work, or to change the way I think or approach my work, I literally have a huge impulse to just run away from it. Not in an escapist type of way. I love getting feedback and critique, but in a way that means that I have to give myself time to process it. And apparently, the way that I like to do that is to completely switch gears and do something else. I did a colorful pen drawing, and then I switched gears to this pencil drawing. And on a whim, I decided to record it. I thought it would be fun to have a time lapse, and I didn't exactly want to take my mind off of my editorial letter, but I wanted to give my mind some space to cope, basically, to react, to think, to stew and simmer. So I spent about an hour working on this pencil drawing. It was based on a reference photo that I found on Google while searching for the word pensive. And it doesn't look exactly like the person that I was looking at, but as I'm learning to draw still, as I'm practicing and getting better, I have to take comfort in the fact that even if it isn't exactly what I wanted, even if it's not perfect, it still looks pretty good. It still has shape and form and it's recognizable. It's still a piece of art. And it's thoughts like that that make me reflect on my own writing as well, especially as I'm working on my first draft and my second draft and all of the revisions that will eventually lead to my published book. And this takes extra special consideration when I'm looking back at the book that I just published. I started that thing in 2014, and here we are 6 years later, and it's out in the world. It's very different than the first draft I worked on. And in some ways, I'm very proud of it. And I think, in classic form to an artist and creator, There's some things that I don't love about it. There's some things that I would change if I had the opportunity to. And that's just part of being an artist. At some point, you have to call it a day. You have to look at the drawing and say, I'm done, and step away. And it's not that you couldn't keep tweaking it. It's not that you couldn't make it better. It's that your time is more valuable placed elsewhere. And at some point, unless you only want to have one piece of art created in your entire life, you have to move on. You have to create more. You have to start something new so you can make new mistakes and learn from them. And this is a good philosophy that I use with my drawing as well as my writing. Nameless Queen, I will be proud of. It is my first book, but I'm already excited and thrilled to be working on my second book, to be learning new things, making new mistakes, getting to know new characters and new worlds, getting to build them. So even though it can be remarkably intimidating to get an edit letter, which can be pages and pages, like 20 plus pages long, or even if it's just a 3 or 4 page edit letter on those first couple chapters, all of it is in service of improving and learning, doing better. So, would I change things about this drawing? Of course. Would I change things about my first book, Nameless Queen? Of course. But am I excited to keep working on stretching my creative muscles in one way or another and expanding my skills and improving my craft? Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day and keep creating.